Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the IDRiM Conference 2024. We are going to start this first session from the Young Scientist Session, and it's a honor for us in order to present some of the guys that are going to show up their research about disaster risk management. Now, I am going to show up a video from Mark Ashley, that is one of the members of YSS from IDRiM, and he is going to explain what is the importance of this session for the IDRiM Society and the IDRiM Conference.
It's Dr. Mark Ashley here, the chair of the Young Scientist Session, and this is just a very quick message to welcome our participants on Monday for the first Young Scientist Session, which is going to be held online. Good luck in the session. I thought I'd just quickly share a minute or two of your time to explain what the Young Scientist Session is and how it's going to be marked. So the Young Scientist Session first came about in 2009. So this is the 14th iteration of the Young Scientist Session. We've had over 500 young scientists in the time period. And the Young Scientist Session it's a unique opportunity. So most young scientists, after 3 years, leave academia and their research doesn't get published, doesn't really get to see the light of the day that it deserves to be. So the whole point of the Young Scientist Session is for you to talk about your research and get it out into the public domain. The Young Scientist Session is a unique opportunity that most conferences do not have, where young scientists are put at the forefront and at the heart of the conference. So for this year's Young Scientist Session, there are 3 awards: one for the in-person, one for poster, and for yourself, the one for online. The way it will be judged is that there will be 6, or today there will be 6 judges who will be giving you independent scores. They'll be judging you on 4 different criteria with different weightings, and they will score you out of 10 on each and will average it out overall. We hope to see you at the award ceremony, which will be held on the Friday of the actual conference. And there's all left for me to say again is good luck, and I very much hope you have an enjoyable time presenting.
Thank you, Mark, for that speech. It's really important. And right now, we are going to continue with Professor Okada. He's a member of the IDRiM Society, and he has some words for us in this session. Welcome, Mr. and Professor Okada.
Thank you, Jason. Hello, everyone. Good day, good evening, or good morning, or whatever. My name is Nori Okada. I'm actually the first and second president of this IDRiM conference. And unfortunately, the current president, Ana Maria Cruz, and the vice president, Hirokazu Tatano, are not available. So I am sort of making this welcome address on their behalf. I don't like to repeat what Mark Ashley was talking about, but let me just share with you kind of the history, how this young scientist has come up and also progressed. When we started this IDRiM conference, actually almost say 25 years ago, or more than that, 24 years ago, including some earlier periods of what we called IASA DPRI, Integrated Disaster Risk Management IDRiM Forum. One of the most important and key concerns of earlier, say, founders were that we really need young people to be more included, and also we should give them a good opportunity to share ideas, and also they should also get exposed to seniors' comments or questions and all kind of things. So anyway, what we really thought was say we really need to give a new energy, a bigger to this society so that this society could grow sustainably. So that's the reason why this Young Scientist Session has been started. And it's a kind of scheme to systematically inherit what young scientists learned through initiating their research concerns, efforts, down to the next generations, much younger scientists. It's you. And we also wanted to offer younger scientists valuable occasions to receive comments or questions from different attendants, including senior researchers. I think this is the reason why we really have such an important, yeah, so to say, give a high priority to this session. So we are very much looking forward to hearing, listening to all of your presenters today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Okada, for that welcoming words. We really appreciate it. And right now, continue with the agenda. We're going to make a welcome speech from the National Unit for Disaster Risk Management. So uh, I am Jason Garcia from the National Unit, and dear colleagues, distinguished guests, and participants, on behalf of the National Unit for Disaster Risk Management of Colombia, it is a great pleasure that we welcome you to the Young Scientists Session at the IDRiM 2024 conference, Resilient Communities for Life. Here, it's really important to show up that we are sharing with you this mission to build societies and communities that are not only better prepared for the challenges of today, but also adaptable and robust in the face of uncertainties of tomorrow. The work that you, as young scientists and emerging leaders, are engaged in is more critical now than ever. We stand at crossroads where an integration of innovative research, local knowledge, and proactive risk management can dramatically influence in the trajectory of global resilience efforts. Your contributions have the potential to drive the necessary transformations in how we approach disaster risk reduction, climate adaptation, and sustainable development. In this session, we encourage you to explore new ideas, challenge existing paradigms, and forge connections that will support your journey as planners in this vital field. The discussion and presentations today will cover a range of topics, all of which are essential to creating resilient communities. From understanding the impacts of education on local disasters prevention to the development of risk assessment methodologies for natural hazards and the integration of nature-based solutions for urban flood planning and mitigation. Your research is at the forefront of global efforts to safeguard lives and livelihoods. We're immensely proud to host such a diverse and talented group of individuals who are committed making a difference. Your work not only addresses to the immediate needs of communities around the world, but also contributes to legacy of resilience that will benefit future generations. On behalf of the director, Carlos Carrillo, and the deputy director, Ana Maria Prada Uribe, of the Subdirectory of Risk Knowledge, we extend our heartfelt thanks for your dedication and participation. We look forward to insightful discussions and groundbreaking ideas that will emerge from this session. Thank you and welcome once again. And right now we are going to start the presentations for the IDRiM Society. And now we are going to continue with Wataru Omoto from Kyushu University. Wataru is going to explain us about the development of regional risk assessment methodology for NATEC events. In this case, in the case of earthquake triggered of Beiju spills. Welcome, Wataru.
Yeah, thank you for introducing. Can you hear my voice? Okay, thank you. So I'll get it ready now. So please wait a moment. I prepare for presentation. So, okay, can you see my slide? Okay, thank you. Now I will start my presentation. Today, I would like to talk about impact of high school education program on discussions about local disaster prevention. This is the outline of presentation. First, I explain the background. In Japan, it is generally not recommended to use vehicles for tsunami evacuation. This is because vehicles cause traffic jams and people may be unable to evacuate. But as listed on the slide, it also has many advantages. Based on these points, top-down considerations in each region, it would be effective to propose a bottom-up approach by residents. Next, I will explain key points of study. In this study, we focused on education program for high school students. This approach has two characteristics. First, educational opportunities for vehicle tsunami evacuation. And second, based on collaboration and co-creation people. From these characteristics, it seems that education program is compatible with citizen-based community disaster management. Therefore, we made plans for practice using this approach. Next, in this study, banner production was conducted. This program has 2 points. First, as a practice related to disaster prevention, and second, to support vehicle evacuation. Considering these points, we investigated the impact of this activity on the discussion of vehicle tsunami evacuation in the community. Next, based on these backgrounds, 2 research questions were defined. Question 1 is what changes can be seen in participants in the program? And question 2 is what effect does the disaster education program have on promoting discussion in the community? These questions were investigated and analyzed through the banner production. Next, I will explain subject and method. First, the target area for this study is the Nishikino district of Kuroshio Town, Kochi Prefecture. This area located on the southwestern coast of the prefecture, and this area was expected to suffer serious damage in the event of Nankai Trough earthquake. The Nankai Trough is an area and trench formed by the Philippine Sea Plate to the south of Japan and the Eurasian Plate to the north. The figure on the right shows the location of the Nankai Trough and Kuroshio Town. Kuroshio Town has been promoting various projects related to disaster prevention and has also discussed the need for vehicles to support quick evacuation. Based on these points, we conducted the activity with people in Nishikino district. Before moving on the next section, I would like to add some information about the problem related to vehicle evacuation in the Nishikino district. This map shows the evacuation route planned by Nishikino district. At times of 2014 earthquake, traffic jam occurred in this route. The main reason for this is thought the several towns on the route. It is estimated that traffic jams have occurred because vehicles have repeatedly slowed down at these corners. Therefore, our intention was to solve this problem by guiding vehicles at the corners. I will return to explain the subject. In this study, students at Ogata High School participated in the creation of the banners as core members, and residents and town office workers also participated in the activities. Next, this slide shows the flow of education program. The program proceeded in this way for a total of 7 sessions. Residents and town workers participated in the 5th and 6th of these activities. In the activity, the following data were collected. These data will be analyzed in terms of both quantity and quality to provide insights into the research questions. Next, I will explain results and discussion. First, the analysis for changes in high school students was conducted from 2 perspectives: interest in disaster information and level of consideration regarding vehicle evacuation. For question 1-1, we conducted quantitative analysis. For question 1-2, we conducted both quantitative and qualitative analysis to check for any change in the content of the statement based on interviews with teachers and video data. Now then, I will give the summary of these results. First, I will explain the results of question 1-1. And for the question, how interested are you in tsunami evacuation science at this time? We compared the results of the before first and after 7th answers. The results of the Wilcoxon signed rank sum test between the answers before first class and after 7th class showed a significant difference. Therefore, it was confirmed that interest in disaster information was improved through the program. Next, I explain the results of question 1-2. For the question, we showed this image and corrected impressions of this sign in free description format. The results of the description were analyzed using the KH Coder. KH Coder is the software program for analyzing these free descriptions. First, we investigated descriptive changes before and after the class in terms of the amount. The hypothesis is that the descriptions after 7th would be more descriptive than before first. In saving time, I show only final results here. Qualitative analysis showed that there were significant changes in some students. And now I will explain the changes of 2 students as example. In their first classes, they described some superficial information on the signs. However, as the class progressed, evaluation perspectives were extended, such as it is easy for foreigners to understand. After that, a student described another perspective, and it was observed that student H considered especially in the 5th class. Next, to investigate what students change in their attitudes and impressions of the activities, the interview survey was conducted mainly with two teachers in charge of the community creation course. For example, teacher P answered that the student enjoyed the activity, as shown below. This situation shows that the ownership of disaster prevention is growing for the student. Also, teacher Q described how the students related what they learned in the activity to events in their own lives as follows. Next, in this section, Analysis 2, I will show some responses in the residents and town office workers who participated in the activities. It seems that they participated in the activities with deep understanding of local conditions and with images of specific situations. Next, this page explains what we can understand from the Nishikino District Mayor's comment at the 5th class. The comments indicated that participants had some thoughts about vehicle evacuation, but they were facing difficulties in putting their ideas into practice. And though the education program, it became clear that they felt their ambiguous opinions had been concretized. Finally, we describe the event observed after the education program and discuss the impact of the program. After the activity at the high school, an evacuation drill using vehicles was planned in the Nishikino district and could be held in May. Various people in the community participated in this activity, including high school students, residents, and town office workers. It seems that the education program facilitated discussion about disaster prevention in the community. With these considerations, this study is concluded. The education program produced positive changes in some participants. For example, some high school students have developed proactive attitudes about disaster prevention. And residents and workers also gained a more concrete image through activities with students. Based on the results, we conclude that the program had a certain effect in promoting discussions on disaster prevention in community. Finally, I talk about the prospects. Based on the conclusions of the previous section, there are 3 steps that need to be taken in the future. The first step is to consider how students can be more proactive in their activities. And second step is practicing different styles of education program. And third step is re-examining the methods of analysis. I would like to close my presentation with introduction of references. Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much for this session. And at the end of the session, we're expecting to have the questions of the judges and the public. So we are going to continue with the next one. In this case is the presenter Jiwen Bang from Sichuan University.
Yeah, sorry, can you hear me clearly?
Yeah, I can hear you. Yeah. Diana, can you show yeah,
Yeah, okay.
Okay, Jiwen Wang, she's from Sichuan University. She's going to explain us about the development of regional risk and assessment methodology for NATIC events in the case of earthquake triggered Baijiu spills. The previous presenter was about the impact of high school education program discussed about local disaster prevention. So go ahead. Thank you.
So can you see my slide?
Yeah, we can see it. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So hello everyone. My name is Pan Yiwen, now a master student of Sichuan University. Today, the presentation title is the development of regional risk assessment methodology for NATIC events in the case of earthquake-triggered Baijiu spills. Well, here I want to first clarify NATIC events is the natural hazard triggered by technological accidents. A famous example of NATIC event is the Fukushima nuclear accident that triggered by the 2011 Tokyo earthquake and the subsequent tsunami. And the second term I want to clarify is baijiu. Well, baijiu is a traditional Chinese liquor with high alcohol content. So in the event of baijiu spills, there will be high risk of fires, explosions, and environmental pollution. So let's come back to my presentation. And the presentation will be divided into 3 parts. Well, first, as we all know that earthquakes they can easily impact and damage various industrial equipment across broad geographic area and lead to NATIC events. For instance, during the 1999 Kokali earthquake and the 2011 Tokyo earthquake, fires and explosions, widespread fires and explosions occurred. And in China, in 2021, a NATIC event also occurred. That is about 150 tons of baijiu released during the earthquake. And this NATIC event will be short as Luxian baijiu spill in the following content. As baijiu industry in China is a very important industry of traditional Chinese food industry. So now China has many baijiu distilleries, especially in the southwestern China, where the seismic risk is also very severe. So it is an urgent issue to assess the earthquake-triggered baijiu spill events and to manage such NATIC events. So we conducted a related literature review, and it is found that currently field studies were conducted on regional earthquake-triggered NATIC risk assessment based on the clarification of the disaster-inducing mechanism. So that means if we use the currently used NATIC risk assessment methodology, it will be computational resource consuming. And we found that currently little attention was paid to the seismic response of biogeosalmon salmon jars that are traditionally used for biogeostorage. storage. So my research question is how to assess the risk of earthquake-triggered biospills from the area-wide perspective. And thus, the overall aim of this study is to develop a regional risk assessment methodology for such events. And the sub-objectives are to first clarify the key influencing factors of salmon jar seismic response, to clarify the seismic response characteristics and the mechanism of the salmon jars, to develop the seismic response predictive model, and then to finally develop the regional natic risk assessment methodology. Bearing that in mind, I conducted several field surveys to investigate the Luxian Baijiu spill and constructed the accident tree of this event. So we can see that under earthquake excitation, salmon jars will have different seismic response modes. Here in my study, I mainly focus on the sliding response mode, and I mainly analyze the disaster-inducing mechanism that the salmon jars they slided and collided with each other, leading to biospills. spills. And for salmon jars, they are considered as single degree of freedom rigid body. And the sliding motion equation of them is related. Sorry?
Just 1 second. I think that the slides are not like showing up like in the correct way. I am seeing right now the introduction. So
Oh, sorry.
yeah.
Can you...
Yeah, because they were not like passing. Yeah.
I'm sorry.
No worries, no worries. Yeah, you can go ahead with the one that you were explaining. I think that is in the methodology. Yeah. So you can continue there, and you can go with the next slides.
Well, I think maybe, I'm sorry, but I want to clarify that I think the presentation uploaded just now is wrong for another, for some reason. And I am uploading the right presentation. So here the presentation you are seeing now is not the presentation I want to present today.
Now, so yeah, I think that but
is it the I'm sorry, but the presentation I just presented is not the one. Yes, that is the one I want to present today.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Okay, perfect.
So
no
shall
worries.
I restart?
Yeah, for sure. You can start from the beginning. No worries. Yeah.
Okay, sorry for that.
Yeah. No worries. No worries.
So I'm sorry, but I'm Pan Yuwen, now a master student of Sichuan University. Today I'm very honored to have this chance to give the presentation on this meeting. The title of the presentation is The Development of Regional Risk Assessment Methodology for Natic Events. In the case of earthquake-triggered biospills, here natic is natural hazard triggered by technological accidents. So a very famous natic event is the Fukushima nuclear accident that triggered by the 2011 Tokyo earthquake and the subsequent tsunami. And the second term I want to clarify is baijiu. Baijiu is a traditional Chinese liquor with high alcohol content. Thus, in the event of baijiu spills, there will be high risk of fires, explosions, and environmental pollution. Today, let's come back to my presentation. The presentation will be divided into three parts. First is the background part. Well, as we all know that earthquakes, they can easily impact and damage various industrial equipment across broad geographical area and lead to natic events. For instance, during the 1999 Kokali earthquake and the 2011 Tokyo earthquake, widespread fires and explosions occurred. And in China, in 2021, natic events also occurred. That is about 150 tons of baijiu released during this earthquake. And as baijiu industries is a very important part of traditional Chinese industry, so China now has many baijiu distilleries, especially in southwestern China, which is also exposed to the severe earthquake risk. So there is an urgent need to assess such earthquake-triggered baijiu spills events and to manage them. Thus, we conducted a related literature review, and it is found that currently few studies were conducted on regional earthquake-triggered natic risk assessment based on the clarification of the disaster-inducing mechanism. So when assessing the natic risk from a large or an area-wide perspective, it will be computational resource consuming. And little attention was paid to the seismic response of baijiu salmon jars that are traditionally used for baijiu storage. So my research question is how to assess the regional risk of earthquake-triggered baijiu spills. And the overall aim of this study is to develop a regional risk assessment methodology for such events. And the sub-objectives are to clarify the key influencing factors of salmon jar seismic response, to clarify the seismic response characteristics and the mechanism of the salmon jars, and to develop the seismic response predictive model, and in the end, to develop the regional natic risk assessment methodology. So our research team went to the scene to investigate the Luxian baijiu spill event and developed the accident tree of this event. I'm sorry, the enemy of this presentation seems not work, so I will present in this way. I'm sorry for that. Salmon jars under earthquake excitations will have different seismic response modes, like sliding and rocking, etc. And in my study, I mainly focus on the sliding response mode of salmon jars. And I mainly study the disaster-inducing mechanism of baijiu salmon jars. And then they collided with each other, lead to baijiu spills. And for baijiu salmon jars, they are considered as single degree of freedom rigid body. And for them, this sliding response mode is related to PGA, dynamic friction coefficient, and acceleration of the mass relative to the ground. So we can see that by using this equation, we cannot explain why the salmon jars they collided with each other. And this phenomenon were observed during our field surveys. So we further analyzed this phenomenon and found that the baijiu salmon jars stored in the warehouse, they have different total mass, which means the alcohol content stored in the baijiu salmon jars, they evaporated with time. So we identify the total mass of the baijiu salmon jars as the potential influencing factors of salmon jar seismic response. And by conducting a related literature review, we found that the seismic excitation and the seismic intensity are also the potential influencing factors of jar seismic response. So later, to verify our proposed hypothesis and to analyze the seismic response characteristics of baijiu salmon jars, we conducted the shaken table experiments. The experiment was designed by injecting pure water into the jars, which has had a similar density to baijiu at room temperature. So table 1 and table 2 indicate the geometric parameter and the similarity relationship between prototype baijiu salmon jars and the model ones. And during this, I'm sorry for this figure. There are many enemies in this slide. And during this experiments, we used the seismic wave records of the 2008 Winter earthquake and the 2011 Tokyo earthquake. And we also choose a varied group of seismic intensity values, which is presented by the peak ground acceleration, and a varied group of input liquid volume. And that is the photo we took during the experiments. After we get the results of the test, we pre-process the data by aligning the repeated experiment results and the filtering. And later, to verify our hypothesis and analyze the seismic response characteristics of biogeoseismic jars, we analyze the data from both the time domain and the frequency domain. And from the results, we can conclude that the seismic response of the seismic jars, it changes correspondingly with variations in seismic excitation, seismic intensity, and the input liquid volume. However, this conclusion is qualitative, so we utilized the deep learning method to quickly reconstruct the seismic response of seismic jars and developed a corresponding predictive model. The predictive model, the input of the model is the seismic acceleration of the table, seismic intensity, and the input liquid volume. After being processed by the model, we can finally get the seismic acceleration of the seismic jar. And we, by analyze through the analysis by the developed accuracy calculation method, we can see that the constructed prediction model has an overall prediction accuracy of about 0.959, which means this model can support further analysis. So as I mentioned earlier, in my study, I mainly focus on the disaster-inducing mechanism that biogeoseismic jars, they collided with each other and lead to natic events. So I determine the occurrences of the collision occurring when the displacement spacing of seismic jars becomes 0. That is the developed collision detection algorithm. And to reflect the reality that the total mass of the biogeoseismic jar stored in the distillery warehouse is random, I used the Monte Carlo simulation. So I assume that the stored liquid amount of seismic jars follows a normal distribution. And by utilizing the developed biogeo's seismic response predictive model, and the Monte Carlo simulation collision and the collision detection algorithm, we can finally develop the regional natic risk assessment framework. But here, I want to clarify the risk in my study is defined as the product of the probability of earthquake-triggered biospill event and the potential spill amount. So as the start of the framework, we specify the earthquake excitation scenario, the PGA, the jar spacing, and the number of jars. And then we randomly sample the jars in liquid volume by 100 times to get the probability distribution of jar breakage. And under one single simulation, we will predict the jar's seismic acceleration response, jar's seismic displacement response, and we will analyze the jar collisions in the distillery, and we then will finally get the probability of jar breakage in this simulation. And then by combining the probability of the jar breakage and the potential loss, we will get the risk assessment result for one biodistillery. So we later put this framework into practice. And in this case study, it is assumed that a certain region has a seismic fortification intensity of 6 degrees. And Figure 1 and Table 1 show the distribution of biodistilleries and their conditions. And we calculate the average breakage probability in different distilleries and the correspondingly potential biospill volume. And by combining the two analysis results, we can calculate the risk of at least one distillery experiencing spill in this region, increases to the risk of all distillery experiencing spill. And later, during our analysis, we found that the placement spacing of salmon jars can also affect or influence the damage probability of bio salmon jars. So we later analyzed the probability of jar breakage by considering the placement spacing of salmon jars. Table 1 is the setting of this case study, and Figure 1 is the results. And each subplot of this figure indicates the breakage probability of jars at a specified seismic intensity, which is indicated by PGA, with the changes of placement spacing. So we can see that the probability will decrease as the increase of placement spacing. But when the placement spacing reaches a certain level, the probability will remain zero. So we can conclude that in a region with a certain seismic fortification level, the placement spacing of jars can consider both the spacing cost and the seismic safety of the jars. Finally, we come to our conclusion part. Well, I will shortly introduce this part. Well, the constructed rapid assessment framework for regional earthquake-triggered natural risk has a significant advantage in reducing computational resource and time consumption. And the seismic response of salmon jars is influenced by seismic excitation, seismic intensity, and the input liquid volume. And the developed seismic response prediction model has a relatively high accuracy in predicting the seismic response of salmon jars. However, this study has several limitations and needs to further improve. For instance, in the future, it is planned to use more precise testing equipment to capture the seismic response of salmon jars more realistically. And it is planned to introduce more seismic excitation scenarios to fully review the seismic response characteristics of the jars. And it is also planned to optimize the seismic response prediction model and the collision detection algorithm to better reflect the physical or the real world. That is all for my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for this amazing presentation. If the judges has any kind of question, you can provide the questions into the YouTube channel, or also the persons attending to the session can ask to the YouTube channel comments. And at the end, we are going to answer the questions. So we are going to continue with the next presenter. He's Thiong Muntali from University of Twente in the Netherlands, and he is going to explain us about the analyzing and selecting key indicators for optimal location of disaster logistics centers in multi-hazard and risk contexts in the case of study of Istanbul megacity. So go ahead, Pyong Munthali.
Are you able to see my screen?
I am unable. We are unable to see the screen. Can you speak a little bit louder, please? Yeah. Right now we. Yeah.
Are you able to see it?
Yeah. However, the sound is not
The
a
sound
little
is not okay.
bit. Yeah. So can you? No, you're right now. You are on mute.
Can you see it now?
It's loading, and yeah, I can see it right now. So yeah, you can play on presentation mode.
Okay.
Okay,
I hope you can
please.
see it.
Yeah, it's taking a little bit of time, but yeah, we can see it. So
Okay. Okay. Sorry. Somehow where I am, I think the network is tripping, but yeah, I'll try.
yeah, for sure. Okay.
Okay.
In presentation mode, please.
I have from this side. I'm on presentation mode.
Okay,
I don't know.
but we're unable to see it here. So yeah,
I'll
just one
put it on
second.
presentation mode from my side.
Yeah.
Are you
Okay,
able to see it?
but
Wow. Maybe it's the network. But from this side, it's on presentation mode. I'm sorry.
So I think that we can continue in that mode. So no worries. Yeah, go ahead. Can you hear us? Yeah. Okay, so we're
Hello.
having hello. So we are
I
having
think it's.
technical. Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Are you able to hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you. However, the presentation is a little bit freeze.
Wow. Okay, let me share again. I'm sorry. Maybe
Yeah.
I don't know. Somehow I think
Okay.
it's the network, but
Yeah.
I
So
don't
we
know.
are going to continue with the next presentation,
Okay.
and at the end we are going to continue with you. Okay. So
Okay. Thank you.
uh,
That will help.
okay. Okay. Perfect. Okay. So we
Yeah.
are going to go to the next presentation. In this case, is a report of field work on the mental and social health of the elderly and flood effect areas in 2021 in Germany. The presentation will be held by Chen Song of the University of Twente in the Netherlands.
Hello, hello everyone. Welcome to my presentation. Am I sharing the slide now or it's coming, right?
Yeah, just one second. Okay, can you share your screen, please? Yeah,
Oh, I think
yeah,
it
we
works.
see it. Yeah.
Yeah, great. Okay, the presentation will be talking about the fieldwork experience on the 2021 R Valley flood impact on the older people's social health and mental health. Insights from the survey and interviews. My name is Chen Song. First, the introduction. As from the literature, it was introduced the severe flood event in Western Germany and the neighboring countries include Netherlands and Belgium happened one of the most severe flood in Europe from the last half century in the 2021 middle July. And 180 people was died in this flood, which released 4 important points for us. First, we used to believe that Europe is well flood-proofed, but in this case, the flooding event is so severe and showed to us Europe is not flood-proofed. And because of the R River flow through the several countries, it is a cross-boundary river which caused the flooding event as a cross-boundary disaster. It requires us to have cross-boundary management and disaster relief. Also, the Europe is aging. From the literature, we can see in up to the year 2100, in every 3 people, one of them will be older people, older age than 65. And also, people did not expect that kind of severe flood could happen in Europe. That is the people's flooding perspective and prevention perspective. Second, we're going to introduce you the study area. As you can see on the right map, the R River flows through the west-south to the northeast downstream. The blue buffered area is the flooded area in the Ahrweiler. If for some people who do not have an idea about where it is in Germany, we can see the small map. So Western Europe, Germany is here, and there is a small point square, which I made there, is the zoom-in map for this region. And in the bigger world map, Europe is located here. And the left photo is myself, work along the R River side during the field work. That is the actual R River. And for the objective, this fieldwork is one part of my whole PhD study project. And for the PhD project, the objective is to investigate the nature and extent of the short-term social and mental health effect of flooding on the flooded old people residents in the Ahrtal in Germany, and to explore the spatial pattern of self-reported social health and mental health among older adults after the flood, by collecting the locations of the participants to see how the health self-reported results related to this area. And for today's talk, the objective is more specific to introduce you the fieldwork itself, to report on the preparation and the process of this fieldwork. Let's go to the method. The methodology I used in this fieldwork includes survey, questionnaires, interview, and observation. For the survey questionnaires, we included 5 sections, from the general information to the social health and mental health sections to know how the social and mental health situation of the older people, as long as the flood perception of the older people and the flood preparation also included in those questionnaires. And for the interviews, we did the in-depth interview for individual people's one-to-one older adults who went through the flooding events, and for the group discussion also with the older adults. You can see from the photo that the photo was taken during the group discussion with the older adults. They are showing me on their telephone the photos about the flooding situation in 2021 on site. They took the photos in their telephone and still keep it after 3 years. They look at it sometimes and show it to the people. And for the most right part is the photo which I observed the flooded event and the flooded building situations in the R Valley. I went to the buildings and went to the house to see the water level and how the flooding destroyed the buildings. And so that's the stuff inside of the building. As you may can see, the water level was too high, even higher than my own house. It's about more than 165 centimeters, even more, like 170 or something. which showed it is indeed very severe water flooded in 2021 that year. And the date of the field work was from the May 27 to the 30 June this year, 2024. For the preparation before I go for the field work, the first step is for getting the ethical approved from our university due to the human participation involved in this study. After that, we go translation of the document from the English language to the German language to better fit in the local language for the older adults in Germany. And pre-test the questionnaire with the older German adults to see if they understand the question well or if there's something caused their confusion. And after receiving the feedback from the older adults, I adjust the questionnaire to make it more clear and more fit in the older adults' understanding ability. And then we print it. We print the questionnaires with the flyers, try to bring them together to the R-Whaler, the field, and present it there. Also, designing the sampling approach while I was in the field, and the field work was holding this year, but actually I went there in last year, 2023, for the pre-visit in the fieldwork site to see what can we really do in the field before we go to start the field work, have a better preparation. And the research participants and the map of the field site. In this study, the older adults who age above 65 years old are sampling population for the interview and for the survey. And also the doctors, nurses are the participants as well for the interviews who take care of the older adults' mental health after the flood. And also the NGO volunteers who take care of the older adults' social health after the flood. They also be interviewed. And from the map, you can see in the middle of the map, the town, there is a small point. Maybe you can see my mouse is moving around. I am pointing on this point. That is, I call it my fieldwork house, my fieldwork home. I went there with local German old couples live in their house, and that is the fieldwork site for my entire more than 1 month fieldwork stay in the R-Whaler. Now I'm going to introduce you the creative ideas I used based on the ground in the R-Whaler field. First is to advertising the flyers of the research. In the bottom picture, you can see the flyers is pinned on the tree. Actually, it's not only this tree, but all the trees along the R River side. And also I post the poster, the flyers in the city center or town center advertising board. There are some information boards stand there for the people to post the informations or the flyers stamp on it. I also pin it there. And for the questionnaire delivery was snowball sampling method and also door-to-door delivery. You can see in the mailbox. Just to put it in the mailbox, deliver to the local residents there. And for the participants recruitment, use the snowball sampling and also for the door-to-door sampling. The icebreakers method involve several methodologies or several activities methods participating with the local people. We drink coffee together. We have the coffee chat. Some people celebrating their birthdays, and we go to the birthday celebrating, and also for the people who have daily activities planned with the local volunteer organizations or charity organizations. They have regular every week exercise. I also involved with them together there to break the ice and make the local connections. And partner with local organization is also a great creative idea based on the ground because, for example, we have the one partner is Adults Education Center in R-Whaler. That helped a lot with delivering the questionnaire to the people who registered on the course there and collect the ready questionnaires back to them and then hand it to me. Also, the mapping, as you see from the previous slides, there is a map showed on the slide, map photo, which I use with the local older adults during the interviews. I asked them, where were you living? And people cross on the map to give approximately location on where they were living to see how the flood more or less impact on their locations. And Qigong practice. Qigong is a famous Chinese practice exercise, which also my personal hobby since I was 14. And it is very interesting to see that Qigong practice is very popular in the German local resident area. A lot of older adults are joining this lesson, and I registered it as well to make the social connection and local connection with the people. The lessons learned. After finish this field work, I have learned several things during it, and I would like to introduce it from 3 aspects. First is to build trust in the community. And to achieve this goal, we need to have several skills to build the trust for the researchers to collect information in the community. And also then we start talking about methodology, how we use the method to collecting the information in the community. Let's start from the first, building trust in the community. The trust is the key for the researchers who are going to do the research in the field. And to building a trust is important to request that people have the friendly feeling with each other, and that based on especially for the research who have a human participants involved. That kind of feeling is important vibe for people who are willing to give you more contribution to your study or not. I see a comment and question here from QC Rao. Ask, did you decide on the questionnaire items based on should I answer it in the end of the talk or should I answer it right now?
Sure.
Okay, I can start answering right now. Okay, thanks
Yeah.
for the questions. Did you decide on the questionnaire items based on previous relative studies, or was there original items involved? Was there any validation and or translation? I decide the questionnaire based on my study project topic, which is older people's mental health and social health impact after the flooding. So it, of course, I read the previous literatures with the topic might be similar to me, but I do not think that is fully the same with other relative studies. It could, the questionnaires was designed based on other clinic verified screening medical questionnaires instead of other mature study who singleized studied before and just use that one. No. And original items involved, yes, for the social study and the flooding perception sections and flooding prevention sections, there are single items involved, yes. Was there any validation and or the translations? The validation, yes, because those are the mature designed clinic use screening questions. And the translations, yes, as I mentioned before, the document was translated from the English to German. Okay, we go back to this presentation. Second, the skills needed to be done by the researchers for collecting the information and build trust in the community. I would like to break it into 2 aspects. First one is from the researcher side. It requests the storytelling skills from the researchers to give out the information about your research project to the participants. While I was in the field, when I sitting together with the older adults, they ask me some information about my study. They ask, what is your project topic, what it is about, and what is the expected output in the future after you have this field work with us. Then I need to explain them what is my research topic and the ideas, and also introduce them the topic. And then after they knowing more information about my project, they feel more safe or secured to tell more about what they feel and what they think from their perspective, from their side. And then we come to this aspect is open ear listening skills for receiving the information from the participant side. It also once the adults, older adults or the participants start telling us the stories from their side, it requests our researchers to have an open ear listening skills without coincidence judgment from the. Sorry for the.
Hello,
for the
starting
buildings,
today, we
report.
don't close at 4 anymore, but we are open all the way to 8 again, like the regular opening times. Thank you.
Okay, then we come to the methodologies used and needed for collecting information in the community. As we might know, the characters and the preference of different type of researchers populations are different. If your target group are children in school, that is one study group populations. If in my case, the study populations are the older adults, then that are the different group than the children. They have different focus points, they have different interest point, and how we talk to them, how we approach them or get the information from them. That's the things we need to adjust based on different kind of research population. And the flexibility is very important in the field work. It requires the researchers have ability to adapt to the real world in the field. The things might different than what you were expecting or what you were predicting, planning in the office before you really go to the reality, the field there. And once you go to the field, you start realize something was different than what you planned it in the house or in the university. And then we need to adjust it a little bit to better face and adapt it to the local situations. As a thing we said, sometimes you cannot directly go to right, then you turn 2 times to the left. It's also turn right. And then conclusion about this fieldwork. I would like to conclude things from 2 aspects as well. First is the things that worked well, and second is the challenges that I faced. Things worked well is I achieved the sampling goal. We were planning to get 168 sampling size, and then in the end, we have 194 obtained questionnaires because we delivered 600 samples to Nantang along the R River, and the response rate is more or less like 32%, which I think worked quite well. And some invalid questionnaires need to be eliminated in the later time. And the challenges I faced, of course, the language barrier is still existing during the communication. As you know, the German people preferred German instead of English, and German is not my first or second language. But luckily, we got some young people who speak English as translators to help us talk. And also, we could not have the stereotypes that old people cannot speak good English. But differently, we would say that there are some old adults who speak quite well English, especially the people you can see on this photo. They do speak quite good English, and we communicate well. And another challenge I face is the area is too large to be covered by me to deliver the questionnaires by foot and to get the interviews covered in those towns. Things I could do better if I have more physical strength. I think I could cover more area and more street. Imagine if I get out of the house from 8:30 in the morning or 9 o'clock in the morning and get back at 11:30, eat lunch and have a rest, then go out again at 2 o'clock and finish at 5:30 or something. Then the 4 days around 6 hour walking on the street, and for physical walking request a lot of strength. And in the night when I come home around 7:30 or 8, then still need to organize the data I collected in the daytime and make plans for tomorrow or make other arrangement with other participants for later this week or next week. If I could have more strengths, I guess things could work even better than now. Then talk about when I finish the fieldwork, the next step is to digitalize the data I collected, includes the survey coding and also the survey transforming, interviews transforming and interviews coding, and then analyze the data later stage in this September. References. Thanks. That's all.
Thank you so much for your presentation. We really appreciate it. In this case, we are going to continue with the next presentation.
Oh, I see the question here. Yeah. I need to answer them. Second question.
But
Have you already analyzed the results yet?
Yeah, but we can continue with the questions at the end of the session.
Okay,
So
yeah.
once we finish. Yeah, okay, perfect. So we're going to continue with the next presentation that is harnessing nature integrated management for urban flood mitigation using nature-based solutions in East Kolkata, Westlands, India. The presentation will be held by Pritam Ghosh from University of Twente. Welcome, Pritam, to this session.
Thank you. Is my presentation visible and is my audio clear?
Your audio is clear. However, the presentation, okay, it's loading. Yeah, right now it's on the screen. Okay, perfect. Go ahead.
Okay. So thank you for giving me this opportunity, and everyone has gathered here from different parts of the world. So I welcome all of you. And my topic is harnessing nature. I will be discussing about the problem of urban floods and its mitigation using nature-based solutions as a method to eradicate or mitigate the same. So this is the picture of my study area. It's a place called Newtown in the study area. If you imagine this place without all these buildings which you see on the screen, you will see a large expanse of wetlands with some water bodies and dense forests, which was the case, of course, 10 years back. But now we see there is a concrete landscape, a thriving city dominating this wetland. And the irony is that this wetland is a part of the Ramsar Convention, and unfortunately, it has been reclaimed or converted into a concrete landscape, into an urban landscape in the present era. Subsequently, there is this problem of urban floods, which has given rise to waterlogging in different places due to the low-lying topographical by default, this land is like this. It is low-lying. It's a saucer-shaped land, which makes it very much conducive to urban floods, and especially this paved surface, this impervious surface development has aggravated this problem further. So coming to my study area, it is in India in the state of West Bengal, and it is the study area is visible over here. It consists of 3 urban centers. I will be coming to them later, but first let us discuss about the research aims and the objectives, which is the potential realization of area-specific nature-based solutions to reduce impacts of urban floods due to the depletion of wetlands. So to attain this objective, we will be focusing on 4 sub-objectives. So first of all, we will be determining the relationship between the urban expansion and urban flooding, whether they are correlated to each other or not. Then we will explore the suitable nature-based solutions. We will identify target areas, and based on that, we will suggest nature-based solutions. And then we will see which nature-based solution fits which area. And then we will investigate the awareness of the stakeholders of the study area, and then we will be reflecting on whether this study was successful or whether it fits this study area or not. So to start with, this is the methodology. It might seem a bit overwhelming at this point, but don't worry. We will be focusing on each of the subparts and we will be continuing. So first, we did a land use land covered analysis in a decadal manner, which is from 2001 to 2021. We assessed the land use land cover change for these 20 years, and then we did the change detection. We studied which were the land uses which went or which came forward, like which are the lands which were converted into built up. That was the major aim that we were focusing on, to find out how much area was converted into built up. And then we did a special multi-criteria analysis by overlaying the different variables like slope, the elevation, the built-up of that area, the vegetation cover, and we came up with the areas which are susceptible to flooding. So these areas which are susceptible to flooding have been identified, and if you see that among the areas which are highly susceptible to flooding, the three urban areas which I was discussing about are there. The first one is Rajarhat, the second one is Newtown, and the third one is Salt Lake. So these are the urban areas which have grown up on wetland areas and are very much prone to urban floods. So there are 7 target areas which have been identified. Of course, for this presentation, I will be not diving too deep into all the 7 of them, but of course, I will be showing you 3 or 4 of them. And these are some of the years and the waterlogging events which have been geotagged through the newspaper archives and the government disaster records. And we tried to correlate them with the analysis that we have done, the special multi-criteria analysis, how much they are relevant. And it fits absolutely perfectly within this, which validates it, of course. And then I went to the stakeholders in the study area, which comprised of different people from different walks of life. They consisted of the administrative bodies, the governing bodies. There were the local inhabitants. There were academic researchers who came forward and took part in this study. So this is the stakeholder classification matrix based on the importance and the influence of the people in the society. And then the responses were analyzed. Here we can see the profiling of the respondents based on their housing types. We had most of the respondents from apartment buildings because the study area is highly dominated by apartment buildings. And then there are other data which we found, like which is the source of inundation, or how much do the stakeholders support the traditional solutions, which is primarily the dredging of canals, the embankment of the natural water bodies to prevent waterlogging or overflowing the water bodies, and pumping out logged water, enhancing the capacity of the existing drainage networks. These are some of the traditional practices. And if you see from the results that most of the people in Likert scale have rated it a 5, which represents that they are not very much satisfied to it. However, we also see there is a diversity in the answers depending on the housing type of the people. And then we come to the NBS, the nature-based solutions typology matrix. So nature-based solutions can be classified into 3 types. Type 1 consists of the protection of the existing natural resources. It may be the water bodies, it may be the wetland areas. If we use them properly, then it falls under type 1. Type 2 and type 3 nature-based solutions require human interference, which is influenced by nature, which is inspired by nature, but it requires some engineering or some man-made interventions. So, for example, type 2 requires multifunctionality of managed ecosystems, or type 3 is completely man-made sometimes, where we design or manage new ecosystems, which are sometimes completely artificial and man-made. So these are the 3 types of nature-based solutions which are there. And on discussing the nature-based solutions, by showing them pictures. There were bioswales, rain gardens, community gardens, which I showed them and explained them that what these nature-based solutions mean and what are their benefits in urban flood mitigation. Here is the percentage of respondents of how many people supported which nature-based solutions. And then comes the part which I did, which is analyzing also the individual willingness based on the housing type. If you see in this graph, the homeless people or the slum dwellers who are there, they have very less individual willingness because of course, evident reasons of lack of space or lack of uh, areas to implement those things, because these settlements are very dense and closely packed. Then comes the motivation among the locals. This, irrespective of the type of nature-based solutions, has been aggregated together, and we found that most of the people are willing to or are motivated to invest on nature-based solutions. And then comes the solutions, which are recommended based on the research, of course, based on the morphology of the area's buildings. To mention one thing, that this study area has a huge diversity of buildings. Not all the places have the same building variations. Hence, different area-specific nature-based solutions have been proposed for different areas based on their building morphology. For instance, for the third flood area, which is shown in this picture, which is Newtown, all the buildings are mostly tall, have flat roofs, hence they can accommodate rooftop gardens, they can accommodate balcony gardens, they can accommodate bioswales or porous pavements on the streets which are there joining these blocks. Here is also a representation of one of the buildings of the area. Whereas in another area, which is primarily dominated by office buildings, again, land ownership is another major factor which plays an important part when we are doing these kind of studies, when we are investigating nature-based solutions, especially when if it is area specific. These things need to be kept in mind, that what is the ownership of the area which I am focusing on. For instance, the area that we are able to see right now on this map is a privately owned area, and this entire place is characterized by office buildings. It's a special economic zone of the city. Hence, the interventions again change for these areas. These areas cannot accommodate rooftop gardens, whereas there are other solutions which can be looked into. Similarly, if we shift to another area, here we can see that, if you can see in this image in the left bottom corner of the screen, the buildings of this area are primarily characterized by glass exteriors, which itself proves that balcony gardens or some nature-based solutions might not be a best fit solution for this area. Hence, depending on the building morphology, here are some of the nature-based solutions like bioswales, porous pavements, rooftop gardens, which have been suggested in this area. Then coming to yet another area where the houses are covered with tin sheds, there are some constructions which are being made on the swamps. Hence, there the nature-based solutions again change for this area. Finally, coming to the conclusions, the area has already been transformed to impervious areas. The change has been already made. So now nothing can be undone, but we can of course look into ways on how to make it more sustainable, because we as urban planners always strive to make cities more sustainable and ecologically more efficient. Although nature-based solutions is not a very popular term in the global south, but it is gradually gaining momentum, which is a good news, which is a thumbs up, of course. But we are also looking forward to upscale these nature-based solutions with the help of the local governing bodies, and we are trying to find effective ways of making these nature-based solutions a part of the special planning mechanism of India, or this metropolitan city, Kolkata, as such. And if these nature-based solutions are made simultaneously, like bioswales, rain gardens, rainwater harvesting systems, if these nature-based solutions are made simultaneously, we can find some interlinkages. They can be interdependent and interlinked, and they can simultaneously help in mitigating the wicked problem of urban floods in this area. And these nature-based solutions are extremely cost-effective and can be easily implemented by the government. The future roadmap is the enhancement of the quality of the research with land ownership data, which was very difficult for me to find in this data scarce environment I was working in. And of course, there were time limitations of my MSc thesis, because of which I could not dive deep or could not derive these land ownership data from the government authorities. But with more time and with more resources, I guess this problem can be solved. Identification of gaps and fostering collaboration among the stakeholders, enhancing the dialogue between the different governing authorities is absolutely necessary to make nature-based solutions a success in this study area, and also running pilots of nature-based solution measures in the study area in small scale, and then after their success, upscaling those measures is the need of the hour. And for further reading, I suggest all of you to look into this thesis document which I have done, which consists of a lot of details which I did not dive into in this presentation because it would have then taken a lot of time. So for further reading, you can of course refer to this main document and get further insights on the analysis and the outcomes. I thank all the stakeholders from different organizations who have participated in this study. And here are some references. Further references can, of course, be found in the main document, the link to which has been provided above. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Pritam, for your amazing presentation. At the end of the session, we are going to continue with the questions. And right now, we are going to go to the following presentation that is about estimating the economic impact of tall volcano eruption using electricity consumption. The presentation will be held by Flor Delisa del Castillo from Kyoto University. Welcome, Flor Delisa.
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, I'm uploading my. Okay.
Okay, sure.
What happened to the screen? Okay, I think you can see my presentation.
Yeah, we can see it. Okay, perfect.
Okay, can I start now?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Okay, then my name is Maria Flordeliza del Castillo. On behalf of my professors, thank you for this opportunity to present our research entitled Spatio-Temporal Economic Impact Analysis of Taal Volcano Eruption Using Electricity Consumption and Nighttime Light Data. Our research focuses on the spatio-temporal dimensions of economic impacts, which are critical for proportionate and timely support distribution. The problem is that economic impact estimates often neglect the spatio-temporal dimensions due to lack of data. Hence, our research tackles this dilemma. So the economic impacts of local short-term volcanic eruptions are often difficult to estimate using conventional measures such as GDP. This leaves spatio-temporal blind spots in support distribution. Hence, we need alternative measures of economic impacts. Our research proposes the use of electricity consumption and nighttime light data to estimate the economic impacts. Previous studies have shown that economic growth can be estimated using electricity consumption because energy is a critical input for economic activities. And similarly, a strong relationship between nighttime light and GDP has been shown in previous research. So past research has also noted that nighttime light's higher resolution enabled mapping of economic activities across local areas. So specifically, both electricity consumption and nighttime light data have been used to estimate the economic impacts of COVID-19 in India, as shown in previous research. And in this presentation, we would like to know if electricity consumption and NTL, or nighttime light, can estimate the local impacts of volcanic eruptions. So our study aims to use electricity consumption, or EC, and nighttime light, or NTL, to analyze the spatio-temporal distributions of the economic impacts of Taal volcano. Here we have two research questions. The first one is how were the economic impacts distributed across time? And second, how were they distributed across space? So the Taal volcano erupted on January 12, 2020, and this eruption emitted ashfall that covered 8,600 square kilometers, affecting more than 700,000 people and damaging agriculture, aquaculture, private sector, and infrastructure, costing over 8.5 billion Philippine pesos. So our research used two main data inputs. The first one is the electricity consumption. We obtained the electricity consumption from the National Grid Corporation of the Philippines, or NGCP. The NGCP reports the hourly energy load of the three main electric grids of the Philippines, the Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao grids. And since the Taal volcano is located in the Luzon Island, we used the data from the Luzon grid. And this graph shows the daily electricity consumption of Luzon grid from January 1, 2013 to January 30, 2020. We examined the data, and there were no events that could result to a reduction in energy consumption occurring at the same time as the eruption. Hence, we can assume that the change in energy consumption during this period was solely due to the eruption. And the next data set that we used was the nighttime light data from Suomi, NPP, VIIRS, DNB bands. And here we use the monthly and annual nighttime light composite from the Earth Observation Group of the Payne Institute for Public Policy at the Colorado School of Mines. We further pre-processed these monthly composites to eliminate negative values and to address the clouds. We followed a pre-processing method described in a previous paper. And so for the methods, the first analysis we performed deals with the temporal distribution of the economic impacts by computing for the electricity consumption loss, or ECL. Now, to compute for the ECL, we first generated a pre-eruption EC model by regressing the pre-eruption electricity consumption on mean temperature and dummy variables controlling for temporal variations. We use the mean temperature because it is a significant variable in energy consumption, as shown in previous research. And also because the eruption did not affect the mean temperature, this means that we can use this variable to compute for the counterfactual electricity consumption. Now, for the pre-eruption model, we added the holiday dummy variable to account for the change in energy consumption during holidays. And we also added the day of the week dummy variable to capture the changing energy consumption across the week. And we added the week of the year fixed effects to capture the seasonal variations. And lastly, we added the trend, or the year, to capture the increasing energy consumption across years. Now, had there been no eruption, the relationship between the electricity consumption and the explanatory variables would remain the same. This means that we can use the parameters estimated in the pre-eruption model to estimate the counterfactual electricity consumption. To do that, we inputted the post-eruption data subset on the pre-eruption model to compute for the counterfactual electricity consumption. This gives us the counterfactual electricity consumption, and now we can compute for the EC loss or ECL by subtracting the actual electricity consumption from the counterfactual electricity consumption. Now, the second analysis we performed determined the spatial distribution of the economic impacts by computing for the nighttime light change. First, we computed for the average of January 2017, 2018, and 2019's NTL. This forms the baseline, and then we subtracted this average from the nighttime light value of January 2020 to compute for the nighttime light change. Now, this computation was performed per pixel, and we computed for the municipal level NTLC by adding up all of the NTLC values per pixel for all the pixels within the municipality. And for the results, so this table shows the regression models for the pre-eruption electricity consumption estimation. Here we have 4 models. The first model is based on the trend, and this model can explain 69.7% of the pre-eruption electricity consumption. Adding the day of the week dummy variables increased the R squared to 0.880, and the inclusion of the holiday dummy variables further increased the R squared to 0.855. Now, the last model, here we added the mean temperature, and this model explains 90.3% of the pre-eruption electricity consumption. So this model, having the highest R squared value, was used to estimate for the counterfactual electricity consumption, which is plotted here in gray line. Now, we plotted the counterfactual electricity consumption against the actual electricity consumption for comparison. And in the first 2 weeks of the eruption, we observed that the counterfactual electricity consumption was higher than the actual electricity consumption. This indicates electricity consumption loss, or which can also be the economic activity loss. Now, on the third week, we observed that the actual electricity consumption exceeded the counterfactual electricity consumption, indicating recovery. With this, we can compute for the electricity consumption loss as an indicator of economic activity loss. By subtracting the actual from the counterfactual. And here we show the daily electricity consumption losses. This graph shows 2 peaks of ECL, and we can also observe 2 recovery valleys here. The first ECL peak occurred on the day after the eruption. On this day, numerous power outages were experienced across the affected areas. Now, EC loss dropped in the following days as power supply was restored, leading to a recovery valley here, which lasted for 2 days. And by January 20, the ECL started increasing again as more earthquakes occurred, prompting greater evacuees and road closures due to damaged roads. Now, by January 25, the bulk of the financial support was distributed to the affected population, leading to the second recovery valley. 2 days later, the second bulk of the assistance was distributed, leading to further ECL drop and eventual recovery by January 30. Now, these results showed us two things. First is the importance of the prompt lifeline restoration and financial support distribution. The second insight we can get from this is that economic impacts have temporal dimensions, and these temporal dimensions are shaped by dynamic factors. So beyond the unidimensional economic impact estimate, economic impacts are actually dynamic. And now we move on to the next analysis, which is the spatial distribution of the economic impacts. So here we map the economic activity losses in terms of nighttime light change. And this map shows the NTLC per pixel. Here, you can see the nighttime light reduction, which is equivalent to economic activity reduction in blue, and the nighttime light gain or economic impact increase in economic activity in yellow. So we can compare this NTLC map with the ashfall extent and built-up areas. And this comparison will show us that the intense nighttime light reduction can be observed at the intersections of ashfall extent and built-up areas. Now, we summed up all the nighttime light changes per municipality, resulting in a single NTLC value annotated in this map. So our results gave us a list of the municipalities with the highest nighttime light change or nighttime light reduction, which corresponds with the location of the disrupted roads and proportion of the affected population. And lastly, our results also showed similarity with the devastated and stricken regions by the 1911 plan. These results can guide reconstruction planning and could be used as a basis for prioritization of support allocation and assistance funds claims. And to conclude, electricity consumption and nighttime light data sets can be effective alternative methods for analyzing the spatio-temporal distributions of immediate economic impacts from volcanic eruptions. And here are the next steps and the references. So thank you so much for your attention, and we appreciate all your comments and suggestions.
Thank you so much, Flor Delis, for this amazing presentation. So at the end of the session, we are going to check out the questions. So we are going to continue with the following presentation, that is analyzing and selecting key indicators for optimal location of disaster logistics centers in multi-hazard and risk contexts. In the case of a study of Istanbul mega city. And so we are going to continue with Tianj Muntali from University of Twente.
Hello.
Hi, how are you? Okay, right now we are seeing the slide,
Yeah.
so go ahead.
Okay, you can see it now, right? Okay. Yeah, sorry, I think there were some network problems and yeah. Okay, thank you. Tonge Muntali, and thank you for this opportunity that I can present my master's thesis results to the disaster risk community. So initially this study was on coming up with key indicators for optimal location of disaster logistics centers, mostly with mud hazard and risk context in the case of an Istanbul megacity. So to begin with, the current decade, like we've seen an increase in these megacities, and we all know megacities are the cities that have more than 10 million people. And this decade has seen almost a an increase in this particular number of cities. For instance, the world cities review by the United Nations predicted that by 2030 there will be 41 megacities. But studies have already shown us that in 2023 we had almost 45 megacities already, showing that there was almost an increase in 60% in number of these, even though we are almost 7 years to reach 2030, showing a really big edge for us to look into these particular cities. And some of the prominent examples of these megacities are like Tokyo in Japan, which has almost 37 million people, Bogota in Colombia, and this study will look at the case of Istanbul megacity, which had almost 15 million people in 2018, and by now it has almost 16 million people. And this particular city is also showing that there's a rapid increase in the population, as in 1999 it was affected by some earthquakes. It had almost 18 million, but within a very short period of time now it's almost at 16 million. So you might wonder, why are we focusing on these megacities and not other urban areas, as they're all prone to these particular hazards? But the main thing is, you can all agree with me that megacities are like the hub of the country, not even the country, others can be even for the whole world. So just because of the concentration of the assets that are really essential for the functioning of the economy, and also because of the interconnections that occur in those particular areas, you agree with me that there is need for prompt response and prompt measures to ensure that they're resilient enough, not just to one hazard, but to different kinds of hazards, as studies are currently shown that these cities are not just affected by one hazard. There are a lot of hazards that are now affecting these particular cities, as it was not in the case in the previous years. Next. So you all agree with me that, yeah, as we are trying to come up with ways to mitigate, to deal away with disasters, but there is always still some residual impacts. So there are always impacts that will be incurred by disasters, which requires us to not just plan for how we can prevent or mitigate, but also plan for rapid emergency response in case those particular things happen. Just because of that, that's when now disaster logistics centers come in. These are like centers that we store the goods, the materials, the supplies that will be essential when a disaster occurs for rapid response. So most literature has divided these into 3 major ones, with a lot of them, they differentiate them in 3 main ways based on their missions, the size, the materials, and also the most prominent one, and the one that we looked at in this study, was the location aspect. Mostly the first and the second, these are like larger disaster logistics centers, and in terms of their location, they have to be located in safer areas, as compared to the third level, which is mostly like it ensures rapid response to the beneficiaries, and it's at a lower level part, and mostly these are located in disaster affected areas. So these particular characteristics, mostly on the location, they also informed the way we did our analysis in this study. So Boonmel 2017 argues that a pre-planned and positioned supply translates into timely rescue and improved relief provision, which is critical to reduce life and material losses, and also to accelerate recovery processes. So I'll go to the research gap, why we conduct this study, because some might argue that a lot of studies have been done on how best we can locate such particular centers in various areas. But we recognized 3 main research gaps that this master's thesis, and we tried to bridge the gap. And the first one was mostly on the hazard context. literature studies mostly show that the ones that we reviewed, they showed that these particular centers, they locate them based on maybe just a single hazard without taking into account other hazards that might affect that particular area. You agree with me that, let's say you just look at the earthquakes, which is mostly the case with Istanbul, because they presume that there's a particular earthquake that by 2030 has almost a 75 chance of occurring. With that, a lot of them are just are tackling the problem, tackling just the earthquake. But you agree with me that you can do something for the earthquake, but what about floods? What about other measures that can be used? And so there's need this research. We looked at the multi-hazard context, not just a single hazard. And also, a lot of studies have also just used the Euclidean distance, which is just the shortest path, but without looking at other accessibility constraints. As you can see from this other slide, the blue one, sorry, I did some animations, but because of some glitches, I can't. You will see that an area can be within, let's say, 5 kilometer distance. If you use a Euclidean distance, everything will be seen as if it will be reached within 5 kilometer distance. But when it comes to emergency response, we also look at road infrastructure and the other accessibility aspects that have to be looked at, which means if we use a fastest path, you will find that other areas can be within the same distance, but because they have different accessibility constraints, they'll be reached differently. And the last research gap was on the weighting methods, mostly on how you can rank these particular indicators. A lot of them, they just use either data-driven or expert views. This particular study tried to integrate both data-driven and expert views to try to see how do these particular things change with different weighting, spatial criteria weighting methods. So the main objective was coming up with relevant indicators, as I already indicated, mostly taking a geospatial analysis approach with 4 main objectives, in which the objectives mostly they looked at. The first one was mostly about what hazards affect Istanbul megacity. What is the spatial scale of such particular hazard? How do they overlap or interact in space? And also come up with some exposure analysis on the critical facilities that are essential when you want to respond, and also come up with an analysis used on the indicators to be used. So it's also important to note that we used 5 main hazards that through the literature it was shown that the area is more prone to or is about to happen, and mostly also using the impact chains, or which hazards can occur when an earthquake occurs, in which we use the earthquakes, liquefaction, tsunamis as geophysical hazards, and also the meteorological, we use floods and landslides. And the main source of this data was mostly literature review, experts, and also spatial data that was mostly used for the analysis of this particular study, with a main goal of coming up with suitability maps of which areas are best for disaster logistics centers of different levels. So coming up to the results, as I already indicated on the first objective, it was most about the multi-hazard interaction part to come up with a spatial scale of different hazards. You see that these areas, the red ones, they show which areas are more prone to hazards of high intensity as compared to other areas that are prone to hazards of less intensity. So it was seen that mostly the areas that are closer to the southern side are more prone to hazards. All hazards, that's the earthquakes, tsunamis, and liquefactions, are of high intensity as compared to areas that are further from the southern part. And also for the hydrological ones, it was also seen that some areas, most of the areas as well, that are also in the southern part are also more prone to the combination, not just one hazard, but to the combination of various hazards that the area is prone to. And on the exposure, we tried to come up with the exposure part on that was per neighborhood, and most of these exposure analysis helped us. It was like it acted as one of the inputs for the indicators, and mostly we didn't go much into the vulnerability part just because of some data constraints, but we're looking into it. So mostly it was also shown that in the geophysical hazards, also a lot of buildings in the southern part are more prone than in the hydrometeorological, the impact is somehow distributed across the city, showing what's the spatial, mostly the scale, and mostly you agree with me that the floods can occur in different spaces, whereas let's say for the earthquakes, they have to occur closer to a particular point of source or epicenter. And also, the study also looked at how will critical facilities or essential facilities that are needed when it comes to response will be affected in case of mud hazards. And most of the critical facilities we looked at were fire stations, mostly for the fire extinguishing, airports, seaports, healthy facilities, and it was found that almost 50% of these are prone to mud hazards and also to earthquakes that are higher than 2,200 of magnitude. However, the study looked like it was like to look at it, how will this be affected, since we didn't go much into the vulnerability part. But we saw that most of these are public buildings, and mostly it is argued that these are constructed stronger or retrofitted, so the impact might be there, but still it can be that much as compared to those that can happen in some of that are not private buildings. And also we looked at the concentration of areas that can be maybe affected by NATEC hazards, but it was seen that the areas that were found to be somehow with high density of industrial areas might be affected by the building materials and other things of reinforced. They are not that can catch fire much, so we saw that maybe the distribution will not be that much. So on the final objective, which was on the indicator selection, as I already stipulated, literature was first used to see how do people use, which indicators do they use. So through that and data availability, we tried to show through the characteristics of the disaster logistics centers, we're able to divide these into 4 main things. And as you can see, the main distinguishing factor between the level 1 and level 2 was the accessibility part, because we saw that some factors are essential for this where others are not. So spatial mud criteria was used in which these were overlaid, and whereas for the 3rd level, a necessity was used where kernel density computation was used just to show which areas will be affected much. So for the DLC 1, it was found that geophysical hazards and proximity to emergency loads were found to be the most critical indicators. Whereas for the 2nd level, it was current development status, mostly is it built up or not, and the geophysical hazards. And it was found that the geophysical hazards are critical for both disaster logistics centers 1 and disaster logistics 2. So I tried to verify on the ground with some of the existing. It was found that, some of the existing point, these dots show where some of the proposed disaster logistics centers are done based on the suitability map. Whereas for the 3rd level, the computation showed that some of the vacant plots were really vacant on the ground upon verification, which can also be used for 3rd level during impact. So in conclusion, it was found that geophysical hazards and emergency roads proved to be the most critical for the location of this in Istanbul. And data-driven methods proved to be really good when it comes to this. But we have to be careful, as these data-driven are as good as the quality of data that you use. And there is need to integrate this with geospatial tools as a medium of stakeholder involvement. So just as a recommendation, due to some limitations, we saw that, we couldn't do this at a smaller scale. So if this study can be done at a smaller scale and come up with some mathematical models, it will be able to come up with a so detailed study on which areas among the suitable areas can be used to locate disaster logistics centers. So just some acknowledgements, and if you're interested for a more detailed of most of the methodological part, you can find the study online. So thank you. That's the end of the presentation.
Thank you so much for this presentation, Tian. Right now, we are going to continue with the questions about the public and the judges. In this case, some judges have already put the questions in the YouTube channel. However, we are going to answer the questions here in this session. So the first question is from the judge Camila Suarez. She is asking to Wataru Omoto about, can you further explain how did you measure the impact of the program in the high school students?
Yeah, thank you for your question. We have analyzed the impact of the program on high school students as follows. First, we collected 3 types of data: questionnaires, interviews, and videos. The questionnaire contained questions to measure the students' attitudes about disaster prevention. The survey was administered at the end of each class to see how the responses changed. For example, for the 5-scale question, the Wilcoxon test was used to check if the results were significant. In addition, some question was examined for student change by text analysis using the KH coder. For instance, we asked students what their impressions were when they saw signs about disasters. Our initial hypothesis was that as the class progressed, students would learn more about disasters and their answers would become more specific. However, it became clear that not all students necessarily became more specific in their responses in proportion to the progression of the class. After several rounds of hypothesis testing on this result, it was inferred through text analysis using KH coder that some students occurred concrete images in certain class sessions. In addition to the analysis of these surveys, interviews were conducted with 2 teachers in order to provide qualitative assurance for the results of the analysis. That is my answer for this question. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. The next question is for Shen Song. Did you decide on the questionnaire items based on the previous relevant studies, or were the original items involved? So was there any validation or any translation?
Thanks for the question. As I said during the presentation, the questionnaire I used was the experienced the question from the clinic screening disease questions. So for the mental health part, and for the social health and the disaster perception part is the original question designed by myself and my supervising teams. Regarding the validation question, I think with the large participants and the amount of the questionnaires above 100, it would directly be considered as valid questionnaires. And for the translations, the English already translated into German language. Thanks.
Thank you for the questions. Okay, in this case, we are going to continue with the next one. Just one second. Okay, for GWEM-PAM, so would an output of this research be a set of guidelines to enhance the resilience of Bayou distillers against NATEC risk? If so, how do you think user collaboration can be achieved?
Yes. Well, first, thank you for these questions. And yes, of course, the developed regional NATEC risk assessment methodology or framework can be used to assess the area-wide NATEC risk with a relatively high accuracy. And then stakeholders can make the relevant regulations and the corresponding NATEC risk reduction or mitigation strategies, such as implementing focused supervision in high-risk areas and replanning the distribution of biodistilleries, etc. And regarding the second question, I have to say I have not considered this aspect thoroughly. So from my very limited perspective, I think stakeholders, including government agencies and biodistilleries, will jointly develop the relevant regulations based on the results of the risk assessment. And then in these regulations, the roles and responsibilities will be clearly defined. For example, the biodistilleries will implement these regulations, and the government agencies will responsible for the responsible to oversee the implementation of these regulations by biodistilleries. So that's all for my answers. I hope I answered these questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your question. So in this case, I don't know if any of you guys have any kind of questions to do to the other presentations in the session. So if you have any kind of questions, you can ask as well.
Okay, sorry, there's a question for me.
I'm checking.
Yeah, there's a new comment.
Yeah, it's a new comment. It's about the judge, Camila Suarez. She's asking, what kind of scenarios did you consider to have this conclusion for the NATEC risk?
Okay, for the start, maybe let me just mention that the NATEC, I didn't consider them into the depth. I just wanted to see, can there be some risk? So it was just somehow in passing. It was not an in-depth analysis, but for me to come up with this conclusion, I would say that it's not an in-depth conclusion. I looked at it was somehow like a kind of vulnerability part on the buildings that are in those particular areas that are more prone to NATEC hazards. What kind of building materials are they built with? So it was found that a lot of them were used reinforced concrete and other building materials, and literature showed that mostly for the fire to be distributed, maybe I didn't explain well, it's about the level of impact when, let's say, the fire happens on a particular site. It won't it won't, what do you call it? It won't spread to other areas more because the building materials are somehow that are fire resistant than when you have building materials that can be not that much resilient to fires. So that's why I came up with that. So yeah, I would say that it wasn't a concrete, in-depth analysis. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Well, I have a question for Flor de Lis. So in this case, what kind of another variables are considered for a comprehensive assessment of the economic impact of the Taal volcano eruptions? So maybe if you can, yeah.
Thank you so much for the question. You're asking what other variables?
Yes, correct.
Consider.
Yeah, what kind of another variables can impact into the volcano eruption directly into because you were mentioned about the impact of economic, but I think that there are another kind of variables that you can check maybe in the study. Yeah, correct.
Oh, there are indicators of other indicators of the economic impacts. Well, in our research, we also looked at the there are actually reports like survey-based economic impact estimates. So, for example, the National Economic Development Authority of the Philippines, they released a report estimating the economic impacts for different sectors. So the sectors such as agricultural sector, the infrastructure, government sectors, and in that report, so they collated all of the impacts. But our one of the gaps is the private sector. So in our research, this method cannot compute for the agricultural sector loss because this sector does not have a huge energy consumption, and also they don't emit at nighttime light. So I think that our method can be used in tandem with such methods such as like survey-based methods to complement, because our research can fill in the gap. Our research has the private sector component. Yeah. And also, aside from this, I think the GDP data sets or gross regional product data sets can also be checked to see the economic impacts, or even the industrial productivity, industrial IPI, industrial production index. Yeah, there are different indices. Yeah, we can use. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you for your answer. The next question is for Pritangosh. Have you already discussed these ideas with the local authorities to explore their future implementations?
Yes, the answer is yes. These ideas of nature-based solutions were discussed with the administrative bodies, the local governing authorities, in a detailed manner, using the semi-structured interviews through which these ideas were presented. These zones, the target areas, the 7 target areas were produced in front of them, and in-depth discussions regarding what can be the appropriate measures to mitigate these urban floods was discussed. And yeah, the data which I showed, like which are the nature-based solutions which had secured the maximum number of votes or kind of those things, were derived from the questionnaires and the interviews.
Thank you, Pritam, for the question. And the next question is again for Tiong. This was by Maria Camila, the judge. Between the scope of your work, have you reviewed the criteria considered to place the existing logistics centers in the city?
Okay, thank you for the question. Okay, maybe let me begin with saying that this study was like there is the transportation unit for the Istanbul municipality. They want to locate, currently, this particular, let's say the unit doesn't have, they are planning to come up with areas to locate disaster logistics centers. So this study was like a help or a study that can also act as a guide to not improve, but to add on the indicators that they are using, that they want to use to propose sites for the disaster logistics centers. So for this study, since it was more still focusing on which sites we can locate the area they want to we can propose new disaster, not new, but to locate disaster logistics centers. So it was like just to add on the they had, is it 5 criterias? So they wanted a study that can add on those particular criterias and what do you call it, and propose which sites will be suitable. So in the coming future, we'll also present the results of this so that we can add on the indicators that they have. So I can't say that I've clearly reviewed the criteria that they are using, but I've just added on the criteria that they wanted so that we come up with a spatial output for the location. So currently, the points that I showed are not on the ground, but they are proposed sites. So they wanted to see if they can go with that or come up with other things. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Theon, for the answer. And the last question is for Mrs. Flor de Lisa, and the question is made by our judge, Sandra Mendoza. She was asking about the data being analyzed was for an already modeled eruption, or it was based on the hazard map with a maximum possible scenario.
Yeah, am I mute? Can you hear me? Oh, okay. Thank you so much for the question. I would like to answer our data. The data that we used is post event data. So it is electricity consumption data and nighttime light data. So we generated a model estimating the electricity consumption before the eruption. And the logic is that if we can estimate this pre-eruption electricity consumption with reliable accuracy, then we can use this model to predict counterfactual energy consumption. Counterfactual meaning the electricity consumption had there been no eruption. So this is a different method compared to prediction models where you have different scenarios, where you are testing different scenarios. In my case, I did not look at the different scenarios or like the maximum possible hazard, or I did not use the hazard map. Instead, I used the data. I use the electricity consumption data because during not normal scenarios, normal time, the electricity consumption follows a predictable pattern. But during disasters, this pattern, ordinary pattern, can get disrupted. So this is what we want to measure, the disruption in this pattern. Not We are not predicting the different scenarios. Yeah, thank you so much for the question. Yeah, I appreciate this. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Flor de Lis, for this answer. Okay, guys, if there is not any kind of questions in the chat, so we can continue. Well, finally, we would like to thank you to all the speakers, participants, and also the judges for their valuable contribution in this conference. And we hope that today's discussion will advance disaster risk management worldwide. And also, I would like to mention that the results from the evaluators and the judges will be present at the award ceremony of YSS online session in Cartagena de Indias, Colombia on August 30. So we would like to thank you again for your time and your presentations. This is really amazing for us and for everybody that is watching this session online by YouTube. The session will be recorded and will be available in the National Unit for Disaster Risk Management channel on YouTube, so you can watch it for the future. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and thank you so much for joining this session.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.